I'm not opposed to anything. Like I'll if somebody needs me for a 3-hour cover band gig tomorrow, I'll be there. That's just always saying yes to most opportunities.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Musician's Mentor podcast. It is a very rainy day here in New Orleans, Louisiana today. Nonetheless, I am your host, Travis Mark, and today I speak with my new friend, drummer extraordinaire, Mr. Jon Loree. Jon is currently the drummer for Tantric as well as Smile Empty Soul. He also plays with Billy Wilkins, who happens to be the live guitarist for Dragon Force. An absolute professional in his field. I've seen Jon play, really cool vibe, just a cool dude, lots of energy. He also makes really funny content that you can see on his Instagram and social medias, which I've linked in the show notes for the Artom Corporation. For those who don't know, they are the makers of Moon Gel. They also do some practice pads and things like that for drummers. Very cool product. This was a cool chat, man. Jon comes across as an absolute professional, which he is, and I assumed he would be. And we shed light on numerous things, from influences to teaching, to traveling, to having your gear stolen, and just an array of different topics. Before we jump into it, please let me remind you to check out our affiliate partnership with the lovely folks at Soundbrenner. Likewise, as usual, please don't forget to leave us a rating or review. And before I continue rambling on, let's jump straight into this interview with the one and only Jon Loree. I'm sitting here with the one and only Jon Loree, a New Jersey-based drummer, I believe. I'm going to phrase you as a musician rather than just a drummer, because I saw you play and you definitely don't just hit stuff. You're quite melodic. I thought you were listening to the music. And to bring that full circle without getting into it before we actually get into this, a lot of drummers don't do that. A lot of drummers seem to approach drums, while you're kind of meat and potatoes, caveman kind of mentality as a drummer, some drummers don't seem to actually really pay attention to the music. So I was really impressed when I saw you play. I thought that was great. And we're going to get into you and your drumming journey and Tantric and Billy and Smile Empty Soul and all these things. But Jon, what I do with all my guests, as weird as it is, even though I will hype you up in my introduction post our interview, do us a favor and tell my listeners who Jon Loree is.
Oh man, the existential questions begin. I'm a New Jersey-based drummer, as you said. I've been in the touring scene for about 5 years now, touring all over the country. Basically play with Tantric, Smile Empty Soul, Billy Wilkins, and then whatever other projects float my way. I do content creation for Artom, which is the company that makes all the moon gels and stuff, and a lot of great practice things. And I'm a drum educator. I like inspiring people. I like making people laugh. And that's basically me. That's I think sums it up.
Amazing. And we'll break down some of that stuff. And you mentioned the drum educator thing. You're sitting there in a drum studio, which is cool. I could ask you about drum education all day. If we land up with some time, we'll probably get there. But for now, let's kind of backtrack a little bit. Talk to me about your beginnings. Talk to me about how you got into drumming, how you eventually started landing up playing in bands. I saw some stuff that you were in a band with your brothers. I believe you're triplets. That's kind of crazy. I've only ever met one group of triplets in my life, so that's pretty freaking awesome. Talk to me about how eventually, from playing on a local level, you end up in bands like Smile Empty Soul and Tantric, and just if you had a bit of a plan or if it kind of worked organically the way some of these things often do.
Yeah, so I started drumming. I'm 28 now. I started drumming around like 11 or 12, which I think is like the best age to start learning how to play an instrument, because you're amped because you're physically capable. 6-year-olds and such aren't really physically capable of maybe playing this instrument. Some are, some surprise us, but for the most part, 11 to 12 is a great age range. You're cognizant, you're ready to go, you can take it all in, and you start to develop a taste for music, which was me from the start. I didn't ever love the drums. Like, everybody has that sort of oh, he was sitting as a 2-year-old playing on the pots and pans, and we just knew that he was destined to be a drummer. Definitely wasn't me. I grew up and my favorite band was Nickelback, and I'm not ashamed of it at all. And so I loved the band when I was growing up with my brothers. Like you said, I am a triplet. We were growing up, and my brother Chris was like, I got to play guitar. My brother Brandon, he was like, I got to play guitar too. He ended up playing bass, so that's where he landed. And then I was like, I don't know, what do I do? At first it was, I'll just manage the band. I'll just be that guy. I don't want to learn an instrument. And so I stumbled into drums. Daniel Adair, the drummer of Nickelback, is one of my favorite drummers. And as a kid, the first concert I went to was Nickelback. So watching him play was that sort of like little spark of, whoa, that's actually pretty neat. And so from there, me and my brothers kick-started our own band called Triple Addiction. And we did that from when we were, like 12 or 13, all the way up until we were like college age, like 20s, 21. And we just started playing clubs, like any little bars that would kind of take us, or anybody that would be willing to have a band, of kids play their clubs, sometimes under the radar a bit, so we didn't get in trouble. But we would do those sort of things. And then it became, well, let's start opening up for national acts that are rolling through. Because when you're playing a bar, generally it's a lot of covers. Nobody really cares, about you. You're just there as background. But when you start playing like venues and real rock and roll clubs, you're going there with the hopes that you can draw in the national act that's headlining. You can draw in from their market to become part of your market. And so we were starting to do that, and we were opening for bands like Saving Abel and Tantric and such. And so after some time of doing that, getting friendly with those other artists, Jaron Galino, who you and I both know, he's a great guy. And when their drummer Ian at the time for Tantric was leaving, he kind of said, hey, I kind of want to give you this gig. If you want the touring opportunity, here you go. And so Ian put me more in touch with Jaron and I talked, and then from there the rest on that was history. I got in, and we just we jammed, had a great time, kind of clicked as a band. And even though Tantric has changed lineup wise, that was my initial inroad to the national touring circuit. Was me, Jaron, Sebastian Labar, and then Hugo, of course, being the voice of Tantric. And then from there, just touring with all these other bands. So it became, now I'm friends with Sean of Smile Empty Soul, and we really hit it off when Tantric and Smile toured together. Ty was leaving Smile, and then was like, hey, if you want to do this as well. So I've just kind of like stumbled. There was never, like you asked, there was never really any plan. It was always this sort of stumbling forward into the next thing, and just being like this yes man of sorts.
Yeah, which is incredible. And, I don't want to get into it too much yet, but could you maybe, since you are sort of talking to me from a drum studio where you're busy doing lessons, and like I mentioned earlier, we might get to talk about that a little, but just on that note, while I'm thinking about it, talk to me about how hard it is to potentially keep students while you're on the road, or potentially, I don't know if you're working as a contractor, whether you're self-employed or maybe you're working for a sort of institution of some kind. But if you are, how understanding are they to kind of keeping your position open for when you do come back in town?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a juggling act. fact number one. Like that's the biggest part about it, because I love to teach and it is a big part of my income. So I can't just lie and say, yeah, it's great, I just kind of like come home and I teach who I want. It's like I still have to teach the students that are coming here. I work at this place called All Star Music Empire in Flemington, New Jersey. It's a great place, and I've been teaching here well before I was in touring bands. And so the hardest part is juggling that, to say, all right, we don't have we don't have a fill-in instructor, and most of my students, they, not to sound conceited, but they do just like learning with me, and I've found ways to approach each one of their needs or their wants of, you know, being able to become a drummer. And so usually the parents in general are really understanding to this, because I feel that parents, even my dad growing up, some of my teachers were in big name rock bands. And it meant more that your kid was learning from somebody that was in it, even if it meant that the schedule was all over the place and shaky. That it meant more that your student was learning from somebody that's actually doing the thing than it is to just have some guy that's been like a local legend that just, you know, he's burnt out. He doesn't have anything going for him other than the local circuit. You know, there's no, it sounds horrible, but there's no like mystique to that. There's no, you know, I get to learn from so and so. You know, there's nothing about that when you're just learning from the local guy, unfortunately. So, you know, it has been pretty easy. A lot of my students that are with me, I've had for some of them like going on close to 10 years, 8 years, you know, or so. So it's been pretty hectic, but not impossible to juggle.
What has been the hardest part in general from making that jump from your local scene when you're playing with your brothers to then going to tour nationally? And what advice could you potentially offer players listening to this who are wanting to do that on how to try and make that jump? And have you got any additional advice on what they should maybe, I don't want to say prepare, but what they should maybe have, inverted commas, prepared for auditions?
Yeah, that's a lot there. I'll try to unpack it a bit. But yes, the main thing that touring life is different from is the highs and lows, I feel, are even greater sometimes, where you do have highs of like, wow, we're playing a massive festival right now. There's a lot of people that are stoked that we're here. And then the next day you could go to the town over and you're playing to 3 people. And they're like, you're like, wait a second, I thought I was in a national band. I thought that it was just cake from here on out. And it's really not. Like it doesn't, maybe for some people, but we're at that circuit that there are still lows. And so it becomes like having to juggle that, to be okay with that, to realize how much gear you go through on the road. This isn't just like hey, we're playing like once a month or twice a month or every weekend. You're playing close to sometimes every single day.
Yeah.
And so you're going through gear, you're going through cases, you're going through things getting stolen or lost, which all have happened to me. And you just have to be able to navigate that and not get too bent out of shape, and just realize that you're investing in yourself as a musician, even at that point of being in a national band. Even still, and again, not to sound conceited, I don't do drugs, I don't drink, I don't do anything. And I feel like that's been to my benefit, because I can be more business minded and I can be more practical on the road. I don't care what other people do. It doesn't really matter to me. But for myself, I know that I couldn't exist on the road without having a clear, level-headed brain going into my shows, or even to just the travel itself.
Yeah.
So I do believe that that's a big part of it too. And then from making that jump, this is kind of like I guess, a two-part thing. Being as prepared as you possibly can to like know the songs inside and out. Nobody wants to hear Jon Loree's interpretation of Breakdown by Tantric. You don't want to be that guy that's like, yeah, so I didn't like that part, so I rewrote like your whole song. It's like there's a hit for a reason, and whether or not it's the most exciting drum part or it's just like, it's this more basic thing. Learn to be okay with the basic of the song, but come in super prepared. Like I was coming into every audition with charts, written out notes to myself of what to fix or what to correct. And then the second part of this is the hang, is the I need to get along with these people for more than just, seeing them week to week or month to month as you would maybe on the local circuit. But you're living with these people now that you didn't know prior to being on tour with them sometimes. And so it's like now you need to fit in with their world, that they had somebody else in this band and now you're another member of this thing. And if you can't hang with them or you can't joke around with them or you can't be a present member of this body, then it's not going to work out. You could be the best player in the world, and a lot of guys are, but the thing that will separate them is saying like, all right, yeah, he was a great player, but oh, he was awkward, or like, oh, he had an attitude, or he had, this going on or that going on. It's half of it is definitely the hang.
Yeah. So on that note, let's just stay in the touring realm for a couple more minutes, okay? Obviously, no stranger to touring at this point. Like you said, it's been about 5 years, and I know you guys are on the road all the time. Doesn't matter which project, really. You mentioned gear breaks and bags break and all these things. You mentioned the hang and how you sometimes got to like be present, etc., etc., etc. Have you got any, I like to call them tour survival tips? I'm generally sort of saying, obviously there will be a couple gear things that maybe you can share with us, and please do, but away from just gear, when you're living with these new families, if you want to call them that can be an adjustment period. I mean, living with one partner is an adjustment period when you guys first move in or live together as is. You then add 3 or 4 other people. And I remember Steven Tyler talking about this in one of those like VH1 behind the music things like a billion years ago. He was saying it was like being married to like 4 other dudes. And at the time I was like, well, that's a weird way to put it, but I get it now. After years of doing this myself, it's like, I get it. And as you will know, sometimes to gel with different personalities, or sometimes someone might be in a mood, or you're not into vices. Some guys are, and I've been in positions where some guys will definitely let that affect their overall approach towards certain people. And when I was, much, much younger, I didn't understand it. I was like, well, that's weird. Why is that guy being such a dick?
Yeah.
And then after a while, I was like, oh, wait, it's not about me. It's totally not about me. It's just what's happening in his life, So I'm not trying to get into anyone's personal business. What I'm basically trying to ask is, do you do anything for yourself to stay grounded, keep your mental health in check, stay kind of aware that, yeah, you're doing these cool things at the moment, but this is going to stop in however many days, and then I'll go back to real life. And I don't mean that in a condescending way, but have you got any things that like you do to keep yourself sane?
Yeah, I think to that point, I haven't had anybody in any of the bands that I haven't gotten along with, where I'm just like, oh, like you have that coworker that you're just like, I don't want to see this guy today. I've never really had that. Jaron, Sebastian, even up to my guys now. One of them's my brother in Tantric, so that's that's something else to maybe chat about. But my brother Chris and Eric Warner and Michael Newman and these other guys that have joined up up with Tantric and then being in, Smile Empty Soul with Sean and then our tour manager, Fonzo, never had really any bad experiences of, I can't stand this person right now. We all get along. We all keep it light. We all love to joke around. And if you can find a group like that, that's huge. Take the music seriously. That, you can't goof off the whole time. Take the show and the music seriously. But when we're all driving and we're all just like, having to do the living part together, we are very light about it. And that's what makes the touring sometimes even better. Those hangs are better sometimes than some of the shows. Like, so you get some good memories out of stuff like that. And again, everybody has their day of like, maybe they played like crap the night before. Maybe we lost something and now we're all bummed out, or maybe we had 6 flat tires on the way to the next show, and so we're all just kind of bummed. The thing that I do, and this is truly not to preach, but I'm a Catholic. And so for me, it's about prayer life, and it's about that connection to God and spirituality for me that does keep me sane on the road. And people can get that inflated ego real quick that I really try my best to keep in check, because I realize that playing drums, number one, is really the most important part of that tour thing to me. I just love playing. So even if it's sound check and we're jamming, I love that. The second thing is just realizing that I'm so small and insignificant in this music world. Like, I do my part, I play my shows, I have fun, I have a job and a career out of it, but I'm not like, man, I crushed that set. Like, most of the time I'm watching back my tape from the night before. Like, I'm always filming my sets. I'm always watching it back and going, oh, that was a little off. Or like, oh, I rushed that fill. Or, that was a little weird. And I'm always critiquing that so that I can get better to when the next night comes, I'm, on top of my game. And I feel like those two things kind of help keep me in check. My prayer life and then watching back my sets and just enjoying the moment of drumming. We all got to have our little bit of space, but for the most part, those things kind of keep me going.
That's cool. That's cool, man. What about the gear side? Do you do any things that people maybe wouldn't consider to do for their gear to maintain it?
Yeah, I think have backup drum heads. I can only speak from maybe a drummer's perspective on this, but have backup heads, have backups of the backups of the things that you might need. There's one time that I left a snare drum at a venue that then I had to have sent somewhere else, but I had a backup of a snare drum to get me by. And you just, you face palm and you're like, I can't believe I did that. Which leads me to another point of a checklist is always nice to have, whether it's on your phone and you're just going through and you're like clicking off the things and saying, all right, I do have everything. I'm visually looking at it in the trailer, so I can't forget it. Those are all good things to do and good practices. And I try to maintain my kit, with dusting it, cleaning it, making it look pretty. Cymbals, groove juices, some really great stuff to help shine up the cymbals. For me, I've started using a metronome a lot live, and so I feel like that helps me a bunch to just not have those moments anymore of like, oh, I rushed that song, or oh, that song was dragging. Like, every night is pretty much the same. We don't run a whole lot of tracks at all. So it's still, guys jamming in a band together. But yeah, those little things to help maintain the gear. Hard cases. I was just talking to somebody the other day about it. Hard cases are great on the road for everything. Your stands, your cymbals. You don't want to throw something in one of those soft, like dust cases and you're just throwing it in the back of the trailer and then going, oh my gosh, I can't believe my floor tom has a massive dent in it. It's like, yeah, you're just throwing it in some cloth. Yeah. So yeah, hard cases are great.
Strongest Superman cape cloth in the world.
Yeah. And if you have like a method, like in Smile, we tour with a lot of our stuff without a trailer. And so, we do have just cloth cases, but that's okay because we're not like throwing stuff in the back of a trailer that's bouncing around.
Yeah.
But hard cases in general are just fantastic.
Yeah. Got to agree, man. Let's talk about the current music business. Okay.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you obviously need to be more than just a musician. You know, you've got to be a creator. I know you create quite a lot of content, hilarious stuff. The favorite one was definitely the sound guy one that had me laughing out loud, dude. It was like you had snapshot my life at that point. And I was just like, wait, this happens to everybody? Amazing. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. You know, you got to be a content creator, a manager, often an agent, a promoter, a merchandise handler, all these different things. You have done, in my opinion, quite great on the social media content side. You mentioned doing content for Artom. So I want to talk about your process. Talk to me about not so much about the ideas you come up with, because I imagine that those would come as you think of things. You probably make in notes and then you figure it out from there. I'm guessing you produce them, let's say that. But when it comes to actually filming your contents and then releasing your content, have you got a strategy? Do you film everything on like one day and then release it over the course of a certain amount of weeks? Or do you literally just film it when inspiration strikes? And the reason I ask is because obviously, if you are trying to do it when inspiration strikes and then you're on the road, you might not be able to just film, I imagine. And then also, you know, again, from having seen you play, you can tell you've put time into your instruments. So I'm not trying to like blow up your ego or anything here, but obviously content creation takes time. People don't even realize how much time it can take. So do you find that it affects your practice time, or is it a matter of, like I said earlier, you may be dedicating certain days to content creation so that it doesn't affect your musicianship?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I, like you said, in today's modern world, the content creation thing is a huge thing. It's what creates new bands at this point and new artists, because they post a dumb video of them singing along to their own song, and then it just blows up because everybody's like, that song in the background of that neat video that they did was sick. And so then it blows up from there. It's crazy. But it was something I fought against for the longest time. I'm like, I didn't have Instagram until way late in the game. And so I was like, well, you know what? I really truly like the content creation side of things. I like making those videos that make people laugh, because they make me laugh and they make me go, oh, that is pretty funny. So it becomes like part-time comedian, part-time drummer.
And I just, same.
Yeah, I was gonna say it might just be my brain in general, or most drummers. I feel like the drummers are the funniest guys in the band. That's just a thing. But I started to realize that nobody really cared about, hey, so this is how you play an inverted paradiddle and this is how you can apply it to the kit, because most of the people that follow me anyway aren't drummers. And so it becomes like, all right, well, they can't even relate to anything that I'm putting out there. Hence why I started the more comical side of things and started all the comedic skits, because anyone, even if you're not a musician, can relate to a comedic thing that happens. Like, some guy stole my cymbal at a venue. And so that doesn't happen to the general public, but they can think it's funny in the way that I portray it. And most of it's all stemming, like you said, how I come about these things. I'll keep a notes list in my phone and go like, in those moments, I was like, oh, you know what would be funny is if I did a video about sound guys. And so I'll write like sound guy video. And then what I'll do is, it's generally around my free time, because again, I'm teaching most of the time and then I'm touring most of the time. So these will be things that I can do while I can't play drums. I live in a condo, so I can only play drums between this time and this time. So the other times, early in the morning and late at night, are the content creation parts of my thing, unless I'm playing drums. And so that juggle has been pretty good, because I can like I'll get up in the morning. I'll have the thing that I just filmed from the day before. I like you were mentioning, I do stockpile a lot of these things. And so what I'll do is I'll just film a couple of them if I can in one day. I'll take the next morning, go grab myself a coffee, sit in my car, and just work on my videos and editing them. So it becomes this sort of like, oh, well, I can't play drums now. I can't practice right now. So I might as well work on something. And that something ends up being these videos. And then from there, the rest of my day can be practicing or recording or whatever else I have to get done. And then at night, the process continues. So yeah, it's kind of been a decent juggle. There are some days where I'm like, well, I really can't film anything. I can't do anything that I wanted to do. So I'll just recycle something old or I'll throw something together. But for the most part, I try to stockpile all this stuff for those times when that happens.
That's awesome. I love the one with the stick that you recently put up as well, where the stick is dying. Oh, that's hilarious, dude. The best part was when the stick goes, like, I can't remember the exact wording, but he's like, you were a pretty okay drummer, sort of thing. You're like, he couldn't even compliment you before his death. That's hilarious.
Yeah, you were a pretty okay subpar drummer.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
But that's truly, even to that point, I don't take myself seriously at all. Like I like being a musician. I don't like the rock stardom of any of this. It's cool when people connect to my stuff. It's cool when people come up and have a great compliment after a show, or want to take a picture, sign an autograph. Most of the time I'm like, you really want me to ruin that shirt with my marker? Like with my name? That's horrible. Like, this is a nice shirt. So I don't like the rock stardom of it. And I don't like people that pretend that's their life. It's like, no, that's probably not. Like, you're not maybe what you think you are in your own head. And so for me, all of those comments, even in those videos, like the drumstick going like, you were pretty okay or subpar or whatever, that's truly, I think, what I think of myself, because I'm always learning and I'm always growing as an artist. So I've never hit this like point of like, dang, you made it, Jon Loree, great job. Like, it's never that. It's always this like, I am learning just like my students are learning, or just like even the best drummers in the world are learning. So I don't think of myself too highly, and that's why the comedic side of things is pretty easy for me, because it just becomes about me, and that's just what I think of myself most of the time.
That's awesome. Well, listen, to any listeners that are wanting to check out Jon's videos who haven't, check out the show note links. I'm going to link a few, as well as his website and stuff, but I'll link a few. I'll link maybe half a dozen just of the ones that they're all funny, but of the ones that I thought were hilarious. Okay, I was asking if it affects your practice, and I don't want to necessarily get into musical practice, but trying to stay in that realm. What is something away from instrument practice that you feel up-and-coming musicians could spend some time either getting a little bit more accustomed to, or learning about, or just, something that they can add to their skill set that would help them overall in the music business?
Yeah, that's really good. I think because the content creation takes some time to get used to. Getting used to like recording yourself in general is huge. Like having just the most basic knowledge of how to mix a drum set can be a really great tool that musicians of really any instrument should know how to do, how they can record their own instrument and put something together of note. And so that's huge, and getting accustomed with any DAW, any digital audio workstation is great. Those sort of things are outside of the practice, but they still take as much practice to get that down as maybe your instrument. So I think that's a big part of it. And then I think this might be a good enough answer too, but teaching just in the smallest way if you can. Like, you've got a younger brother, they want to learn how to play the drums, you sit down and you show them, because having to explain it to somebody else helps you to understand it. And I've had those moments in the lesson room where somebody comes in with a Dream Theater song and I'm like, I don't know how to chart this out. So then I have to learn it, which in turn makes me a better drummer. Or even just the smallest thing of like, I have a student that's not understanding something. I'm like, why aren't they getting this? But I have to figure out multiple ways to explain it so that one of those catches them. And then in turn, I'm like, oh, well, this is for later use, or even for myself. Now I understand this concept a little bit better, having had to explain it. So I think that those are a couple of things that musicians can do outside of just their own practice that can help them along.
Yeah, good advice. What, for you personally, do you think is the hardest part about being a career musician?
I guess the uncertainty would be it. I'm somebody that I like to know what's happening, when it's happening, and where I need to be and where I need to go. And there are certain times that, like, I'll have a couple of students that just forget they had a lesson, and then now I don't make money. Or like, there's a show that dropped and it was like a good paying show and we were all stoked about it, and then it just doesn't exist anymore out of nowhere. People get sick, tours get canceled, things like that happen. Where I'm someone that grew up with a lot of structure. My dad is a retired police officer, so structure was a part of the life in some way. He was very relaxed, but there was structure to our life. And you get told by your parents and so on, oh, well, this music thing's kind of just a phase, right? And like, you won't be doing that. You need something that has like a 401k and this and that. And so it's the hardest part is having to juggle that as a part of the life, to just be okay with the uncertainty, or to be okay with the times where it's not great, because there is a time coming where it will be fantastic.
Yeah. And again, not to get into your personal life, you mentioned 401k there, something that's come up many times over the course of this podcast is musicians' financial security, planning for retirement, blah, 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 blah. Have you got any little nuggets of information that you could potentially share in that regard? I'm not asking for your personal life here. I'm just like, is there anything that maybe you started doing from the start or that you've learned along the way that you're going, well, hey, if I maybe put this much aside, or if I try and monetize this, or whatever it may be, anything like that?
Yeah, I think saving is huge, just in anything. And even if you're investing as a musician in like something, you're putting a couple of pennies aside to hopefully like have something that you can rely on when the times are tough. Because of that uncertainty, when the money's great in this industry, it's awesome. But around the corner could be a time where you're like, I can't even afford to pay for my car this month. And so you need to always be forward thinking to go, all right, if I'm getting in $1,000 this week, that's fantastic, but I'm not going to touch it. Like, I'm going to try my best to survive on the bare minimum. Even for myself right now, me and my fiance, we just bought the condo that we currently live in. And so it's like, I don't want that time to come where the tour dries up or the lessons dry up and now all of a sudden I'm left with nothing. It's like, I want to be prepared that couple of months down the line, if I need to start looking for a new gig or a new whatever, that I can be financially stable to do that. So I cut out all the nonsense spending on things that I don't need. It's really, it comes down to just drums and food and, necessities, cars and that. So I think just being prepared for the worst is probably a good way to go about it.
Yeah, I have to agree. And again, to kind of hijack onto your last answer, if hypothetically you were to have to suddenly find yourself another gig, right? Let's say, and again, this is like all worst case scenario, but it's just for purpose of the podcast, okay? You find yourself without a gig, but you have the experience that you have. What do you do to try and go find yourself a new gig?
That's a good question, because I think it sometimes sounds desperate when you're and almost like in a way selling yourself short to go, all right, I've lost this gig, I've lost this. Like you make a Facebook post, does anybody out there know of anybody that's in search of a drummer? And it's like that. Don't sell yourself short, all right? I think what I would do in that scenario is just reach out to my closest friends, just let them know that I'm, not this sort of desperation thing, but just to go like, hey, I don't have any tours coming up right now. So if there's anything that I can do to lend, a hand in some capacity, I'm available. And it could be anything. I think when you become well-rounded to the point where if I lost both touring gigs, I could still teach. And so that means that I can now go, well, with all of my experience, I can just become a teacher for a bit until the next thing comes in. Or if something pops up and I'm like, all right, well, I don't have a touring opportunity right now, at least I've made that connection with this person that can help me to get along to the next thing. So yeah, I don't think I would go out of this desperation of like, I need a gig. Does anybody have a gig? Just start. Yeah, pick me. I'm the best. Ask my mom. I'm the best. No, I don't think it would become that. I think what it would become is just like putting the feelers out there in more of a subtle way. And I've thought about this a bunch because, I'm always trying to be forward thinking that these bands that I'm in are great rock bands, but they are also 20 years old. Like I was 6 when all of these bands were hitting, so the life of them isn't 10 years down the road. So I try my best to keep my hands when I am home in other projects that are around me, to not go, I'm the national touring guy now, so I'm set and I don't need any of these local shows. I'm from New Jersey, so like the city's not too far from me. So I commuted to the city over the weekend to play 5 songs in a band that I haven't played with in like a year. And so it was just like I can do this because I don't have anything else going on. So I might as well go into the city and play a show with a couple of guys that I know, and then I'll commute on back home. I'm not like this. I'm not opposed to anything. Like if somebody needs me for a 3-hour cover band gig, tomorrow I'll be there. That's just always saying yes to most opportunities.
Yeah. What about networking in general? Again, let's keep this hypothetical. You move to a new town and nobody knows who you are and you're not part of those bands. What would you personally do to start networking again?
I would start going out to like the open mics of the area. Even things like church bands on Sundays are great musicians in a lot of those groups. And so you can go to a church on a Sunday and watch a band and go, hey, I'm, new to the area. I've been playing music for blah, blah, blah. I've done this and that and the other. And so I'm just, I'm here whenever you guys need me, if you ever do. One gig I got when I was a kid was just going up to somebody after a show and saying, hey, I'm a drummer and I really love your band. So like, if you ever need me, I'm not implying that you need a drummer, but if you ever did, I'm here. And the guy called me like a month later and was like, hey, so I do need you. And my drummer just backed out last minute and I need somebody to learn these songs in like an hour. And it's like, that's what I did. So I think if you can go into wherever that music scene is, the local scene, to just scout out any of the venues or the bars that have that live music thing, to just walk in there and be present and be somebody that walks up to the band after the set and just says, hey, you guys were fantastic. Start up small talk, not this like, hey, here's my credentials, here's my business card, I've done this and that and the other. Nobody wants to hear that. People would much rather have a friend first than they would the other thing, than this sort of like stale business transaction of like, I'm a drummer, you need me, here's why, because I've played with this and that, and that's horrible. You just got to be cool first and then shoot your shot. It's like a dating thing. I think it's like a dating, I don't know. I didn't date a whole lot, but I do think that it's like this sort of, you gotta take it slow.
Yeah. No, dude, you're on the money. It's like, I've seen some guys operate at that intense, like, vibration that you just like, whoa, like, whoa, dude, like just back up a little. Like, I mean, you got to be used to that as well. Like the closeness of the way some people operate. You're like, dude, like, man, you're just a little too in my face right now. But you can't say it. But it's like, it's weird. Like, you wouldn't operate like that with normal people. What makes this okay?
Yeah,
Anyway.
for sure. It's the musician. I think it's the what it appears to be is they're meeting a rock star, when in reality you're just meeting a person that happens to like to do this thing that you like to listen to. And so it becomes this, or in the musician sense of things, it's like, that's the guy that's doing the thing that you want to do. So here's how you gotta talk to him and you gotta tell him who you are. It's like, that's not gonna get you anywhere.
Yeah, have to agree. All right, Jon, I have one last question for you, dude. What do you think has either been the best piece of advice you've ever received in regards to your music career? Or, if you can't think of something like that, what do you think could be great advice for up-and-coming musicians that might help their careers?
That's great. I have two things here, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Nobody, I don't think, ever really taught this to me, but saying yes was always my go-to thing. That if somebody said, I need a drummer, like I brought up that story from earlier, I need a drummer tomorrow, can you do it? And if you're available and you can physically be there, then saying yes is the right track. I've had to say no to things that I don't regret saying no to, because I was physically somewhere else that I couldn't do both at the same time. So saying yes also comes with all that preparedness and being on the money and, being the guy that knows the songs better than the band that you're trying out for, and so on. So yes is like the go-to word. If somebody's like, can you teach my nephew and he's 7? Yes. Can you teach this kid that's got a bunch of problems that needs help with this? Yes. Like, can you record on a song? Yes. Even if you can't, like, figure it out, because you never know when any of those yeses will bring you to something else. Then the other thing, and this is a funny story, my old drum instructor was Johnny Kelly, who plays with Quiet Riot currently, but also he was in Typo Negative, which is more of note, and then he played with Glenn Danzig for a while. And at the time, I didn't know that he was so famous or so prevalent in the drumming world. And so I was just like, oh, there's this guy that's teaching me these songs. And I was doing like a Led Zeppelin tribute show of sorts, and he's like, I'm coming out to that. And I was like, word, I'm gonna impress this guy. So I was like, I'm putting in all the stick tricks, I'm throwing the sticks in the air, I'm hitting harder than I ever could, I'm just trying to show off for Johnny Kelly because he's in the audience and he's got to hear me play. And after the show, I'm like so proud of myself. And I come up to him, I'm like, Johnny, what'd you think? And he's like, we're going to talk on Wednesday. And so Wednesday rolled around and he was like, yeah, so that stick trick stuff and all that other nonsense, that needs to stop. He's like, learn how to play your instrument first and then do all of that. I put so much on the performance aspect of myself that I didn't take the time to learn my rudiments, or I didn't take the time to learn even some of the simplest stuff. And so I think the other little token of advice is don't be so into the showmanship of guitar player, piano player, whatever. Don't be so far into that you forget that you have a whole instrument to learn. And so put a lot of time into perfecting your craft and being a true musician first. And then all of that comes second. That was a tough lesson because at the time I was like, what does he know? He's a washed up drummer that doesn't know anything. And really, he was right. And I was wrong. So I think if you put that time into your craft, you're going to be so much better off.
I have to agree. And on that note, I had a discussion earlier this morning about just the growth it takes to sometimes admit that you're wrong. Because a lot of guys just don't do it. A lot of guys are like, I'm right all the time and everybody else is always wrong. You're like, no, man, like we're all wrong all the time. Like we get these moments where we're right, but like some guys just really could self-improve. But that's a whole nother subject. Jon Loree, dude, thank you, man. I had a blast. That was a lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing what your future holds. And I saw you coming back here soon, I think Lafayette, which is a bit far for me. But if you end up coming back closer, hit me up, man. We'll go for some beignets. And I can't thank you enough for your time, dude.
Thanks, Trav. Appreciate it.
Peace. Okay. Jon Loree, everybody. As usual, I'd like to thank Jon for his time. I'd like to publicly thank each and every one of you for your time. Thank you so much for the support that you give me and this podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to keep doing these interviews, and I will continue to do so. As I said at the top of the show, ratings and reviews are very helpful in continuing to get good guests like Jon. So please, if you have a minute, leave us a star or a review or a share across your favorite streaming or social media. I greatly appreciate it. As usual, if you need any help or advice regarding your artist career or band career, or just want to talk music in general, feel free to drop me a DM. You can find out more about myself or the Musicians Mentor podcast at musicians-mentor.com. I'm going to go do a bit of practice before this week's gigs. But as usual, be safe out there, be diligent, but have a bit of fun. Peace.